Gentlemen, it's good to have you both back on the show and also to have you together for the first time on the show. Remind everybody who you are. Gonzalo, we'll start with you.
Hi, well, thanks for having us here. I'm Gonzalo from Mexico. We do a lot of executive protection, firearms training, and some crisis management stuff down here in Mexico. And since a few years ago, we're doing a lot of extortions, fake calls, fake kidnappings, and some other things around that.
All right. And Pablo, remind everybody who you are.
Thank you, Andy. My name is Pablo Ortiz-Monasterio. I'm founder of AS3 Driving in Mexico and in the US. But I started out a long time ago with crisis management, and I was involved in a group that did K&R negotiations. And I've been doing, overseeing a lot of or helping a lot of families through extortion problems ever since. But kidnappings no more.
And your experience is really why I wanted to talk to you today. We have recently seen, I know in the United States and probably in North America, this hysteria that is built up around AI voice cloning when it comes to virtual kidnappings. Um, in your experience with all the stuff that you've done, do you believe the hype in this story? What are your thoughts?
So, well, I'll start. We've heard a lot of news about that. It was actually one news, but it was all over the internet, and it
Right.
was all over the security community in Latin America. And when I read a lot more about that, I believe it was not actually anything regarding AI, because it happened just like it happens here every single day. We receive, not myself, but around the company or around our clients, we receive more than 10 of those calls a day. So it's a very characteristic call.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that was AI. We do have a problem, and there's going to be a problem with that. But I don't think that news exactly was AI. We believe we spoke, Pablo and I spoke about that news, and that is a normal extortion call or a fake ransom. It depends exactly what it was, but usually you receive a call or someone in the house receives that call, and then they'll say, "Is that you? Whatever, Jason?" And
Mm-hmm.
there's not even a Jason in there, and
Right.
and then he's gonna say, "No, no, it's me, it's Andy. Who's this? Oh, I'm sorry, wrong number." That's it. So 2 days later, they're gonna call, "Andy, is that you?" Or they're gonna call, and your wife is gonna answer, and, "Oh, Andy told me I have Andy here with me." And there's this noise that might be like a siren or some noise that will make you think that I'm at an accident scene,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna tell I'm with Andy. He cannot answer you right now, and then there's gonna be someone saying, "Hey, yeah, that's me," and that's it. So that in that exact second, the victim will believe that Andy is with you, and then his whatever mind will go away. He's gonna get kidnapped. The amygdala is gonna get kidnapped. Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
heard that from Chris Chris Hadnagy. He
Yes.
a lot
Yes.
about that.
Uh-huh.
So it's gonna get that, and you're gonna enter into a trance, into a if you were hypnotized,
Mm-hmm.
and you're gonna believe everything that's gonna happen after that. They're gonna ask you not to hang the phone. They're gonna tell you, wait for my instructions. Please go and transfer money or whatever. And since you're helping your husband, they're gonna tell you something that's key to this is they will not let you hang up, and they will not let you make another call. If you
Mm.
start making calls, they'll tell you, wait, don't make that call, because then I'm with Andy here, and they will speak and speak and speak, and they will they will possess you, and then you'll
Right.
do
Right.
whatever they're saying. Pablo.
Let me go back a little bit, Andy, and because what Gonzalo is saying is very interesting and it's important, but it's very important to understand something because these news, what they are telling you is they're using AI to fake your family's voice to
Right.
to tell you that they are kidnapped, right? And that has a big connotation right now because AI is big. It's in everyone's thinking about it, everyone's talking about it, and it's supposed to be easy. But here's the thing: it's not that easy
Mm-hmm.
doing a cloning. And I've been working with some programmers lately. And so if you wanted to clone someone, because we're actually right now doing experiments to clone some of the people that work with us so that we can create online videos just by typing what we want them to say. But it's several $1,000s they
Yeah.
have to invest in actually creating that voice. Then you have to have hours of voice in a good quality recording so that you can actually get that to the computer and have it synthesized. And then you have to have some very big computers and some very good experts to actually feed that or train that model to create the voice. So maybe somebody wanted to clone your voice. That would be
Mm-hmm.
easy because you go to the podcasts
Right.
and
Right.
and you get hours
Yeah.
or our voices because we're also in a podcast in Mexico,
Yes.
and then they would have access to that. But if they wanted to clone your son or your daughter's voice, they would have to have access to that. So that's not easy. The
Mm-hmm.
problem here is we are, and that comes to our the biases in our brains. We're trying to explain something that is happening, and we have seen this happen since 20 years ago.
Right.
People call, and the moment that someone says, "Dad, they've kidnapped me, please help," and then they take away the phone from you. And if I've had a lady that when I told her that was not your daughter,
Mm-hmm.
she said, "How dare you?" She was
Right.
very, very pissed.
Sure.
Tell me
Yeah.
that as a mother, I would not recognize my own child. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to cross any lines here, but I'm telling you, they do not have your daughter. And
Yeah.
she had it, and they were on the phone. And so eventually the daughter showed up.
Right.
And then she comes to me and says, and she apologized and says, and she says, "Well, I could have sworn." I
Right.
know.
Yeah.
Maybe she doesn't even sound anything like her. But when they
Mm-hmm.
hijack the amygdala, the whole
Right.
brain, and the guys at Kidnapping talk about this as well, and
Yeah.
Colonel Grossman talk about this. The whole brain shuts down from the top down. And
Mm-hmm.
then your amygdala takes over and starts making the decisions. And the amygdala really doesn't care if the voice sounded or not like her. It's
Mm-hmm.
just going into survival mode. So you start acting and you start doing things that you wouldn't normally do if you had thought about.
Right. Right. Yeah, and yeah, I thought a lot about what the three of us learned from Greg and Brian at Arcadia Cognerati, and how the human brain just sometimes works against you, where you would think in a calm situation, I would of course know what my child's voice sounds like, but I'll tell you what, if you go out into a store and a child calls out mom, like six women turn around and look because that's just how the brain works. And as a parent, that is certainly how the brain works. So you've both brought up really great points here. So I'll ask you, you talked about you get these fake kidnapping calls, like 10 times a day, that sort of thing in your line of work. What is the difference? How can we tell the difference between a fake kidnapping call and a real kidnapping call? What should we be looking for? What you got there, Pablo?
Um, Here's the thing: kidnapping after the fact, or after everything's said and done, it's an extortion.
Right.
But the thing with kidnapping is if the what's we have to go back a little bit, right, and figure out the motive of the call. What do they want? They don't want to kill the person that they have kidnapped. Once they
Right.
get that person, what they want is to exchange that person for money. The motive is actually, at the end of the day, it's money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what we need to do here is understand that if we hang up the phone, because of course when it's a virtual kidnapping, and Gonzalo just said it very well, they don't want you to hang up the phone because if you hang up the phone, you're going to look for that person. So they want to keep your amygdala engaged so that you're constantly doing what they want you to do. But what happens if you hang up the phone and it's a virtual kidnapping? The moment there's no communication, there's no extortion, right? There has to be communication for the extortion. But what happened? And at that moment, you call whoever they're telling you that it's kidnapped, and they answer the phone. Then you're done. You don't have to answer that phone anymore. What if it's a real kidnapping? And a lot of people say, well, what if I make a mistake and I hang up the phone?
Sure.
And they actually have that person kidnapped. Well, their business, their objective is not to kill that person, right? So they're going to make sure that you get that message some other way. Maybe try calling back, but at least you bought yourself some time until you can find out what is happening. So it's about motive. I've never heard, and I saw a lot of kidnappings, and we've studied thousands, and I've never heard of any kidnapped victim being killed or actually harmed because they hung up the phone, right? And that is one of the things that people have to understand. When it's immediate, when they don't want to hang up the phone, there's got to be a reason.
Right. What
do you think, Gonzalo?
So I would say there's a clear difference from fake calls. Fake calls would normally try to trick you into something, and then you will voluntarily give money to the person. So in Mexico, there's a lot of people cleaning houses, right? So that's very normal here. So they will wait for the time that there's no one in the house but the person, the cleaning lady. And then they'll call her, and then they'll tell her a story that Mr. Andy needs money, and then go break into the security box and whatever, and give me the money. So they will come out of the house, and they will just hand you the money. So but by themselves. So since that happens, that is not nothing. There's a
voluntary exchange.
¿Cómo se dice delito, güey?
There's no crime.
Yeah, there's no crime there. Okay, so there's no crime. They are voluntarily giving you the money. So of course they're not giving the money to the person who called. The person who called might be in whatever, the US or in a different city. And then they'll hand the money to someone out there. And if they go to court or whatever, that guy's gonna tell, dude, I was just passing by. This lady asked me if I was Ruben, whatever. And since I'm Ruben, she told me this is for you. And I was like, okay, thank you very much. And then I have that money for me. So there's no crime there. That's why it's so difficult to go after that in Mexico.
Wow.
At least in Mexico, right?
Wow.
So you want to add something?
There's another thing to add to what Gonzalo is saying right now. Even in the US, and I was having a beer with a friend yesterday, and in the US, and he was telling me that this happened to him a few years back when they called him and they told him that they had his wife, and his wife is Mexican. His wife travels a lot to Mexico, and he said the only thing that made me realize it was not my wife is because my wife was sitting right across the table from me.
Right.
But the thing is, they were in the US, were actually in Texas at the time. His wife traveled a lot to Mexico, and he said, well, the moment they passed me my wife, and my wife said whatever, I was looking right at her, and I said that could have been her.
Yeah.
Right? But why do they do this in the US as well and not the real kidnapping? And it's because there is no risk. What Gonzalo is telling right now is it's an anonymous voice on the other side of the telephone who could be sitting in a jail in Mexico, which is very common.
Oh, okay.
So they're already in jail. They have call centers inside jails in Mexico. They've of course that's not permitted or legal,
right. Yeah, it's not legal. Right. Got it.
But they do. They have those, and so it's a person that's already in jail, has nothing to lose, and is calling you in the U.S. where there are several laws preventing you from paying that ransom. But a lot of people will not report that because of the amygdala being hijacked, and they end up paying that money to whoever called and wiring that money to whoever called. And but there is no risk.
Right.
At all. And also the asking price is easy to get. Let's say $2,000. I mean, it used to be like $10 million. So that's not reachable. But $2,000, it's very reachable.
Right.
And we're
Sure.
gonna go deposit that in the next hour, and they'll do that 5 6 times a day, multiplied by 2,000 by $1,000, make that every single day. That's a lot of money just for calling people
Yeah.
and telling them lies.
Yeah. So you're
So
just on the phone with no risk, making thousands of dollars a day, scaring people. And some of these call centers are already in prison. So really you don't have anything to lose at that point. So why not? Man,
But
that is that is terrible and fascinating all at the same time.
absolutely, but
imagine
think about a kidnapping. Sorry, Gonzalo, think about a kidnapping of all the infrastructure that you need to actually carry it out. When
Hmm.
if you do virtual kidnappings or extortions, you don't even need to have a lot of information because people will give you that information once the amygdala is hijacked, right?
Right.
And then you just make a lot less money, but you have to work maybe more hours, but you don't expose yourself at all, and you don't have to invest anything but the cost of the call.
Okay.
so it's risk free basically.
Right. Right.
And as Pablo said, you will give him the information. It's just human hacking, right? Human
Hmm. Hmm.
social engineering.
Right. Social
So
engineering.
that's it. So imagine having an eSIM and a SIM for the phone
Hmm.
that's not even reachable, or there's no way to know where that came from, or even just a Mexican one. As Pablo said, call someone from the U.S. whose wife is in Mexico, or call the wife whose husband is in Mexico, and you let them know that he or her has been kidnapped, and that's pretty easy. If not kidnapped, maybe he had an accident. They'll just invent a story. So that's a fake call. They'll just
Right.
invent a story where um, they are not. It's not an extortion. So they will not tell you that you lose something. They'll just tell you we need this money for
Okay.
that, and then you'll give them the money.
Right. Okay, because that's one thing I wanted to ask you because earlier you gave the example of, oh, hey, I'm here with Andy. He's been in a car wreck. Honestly, I don't think I would have thought about that type of story. What are the most common stories that you hear that these people are trying to deceive their victims with?
Before we go into that, let me just set the record straight, or create the appendix here. There's a difference between extortion and fraud.
Okay,
For it to be an extortion crime, there has to be a threat. If you don't do what I am asking you to
sure.
do, I will do what I'm telling you I will. Right?
Got it.
That is an extortion.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not a violent crime. It's just fraud, or it's just they've you've been fooled into doing something. And when you talk about, hey, Andy just been in an accident, and sometimes what I'll do is I'll ask for somebody else's phone number, or I'll ask for, or
Hmm.
he's being taken to jail. I don't have any money. Please help us out, and I'll let Gonzalo tell some of the stories. But they can be very creative, but that's not an extortion,
Right. Okay. And
right?
thanks for
That's just
clarifying
social
that.
engineering.
Right.
So Andy, this has been going on for forever. When we didn't have cell phones, people would just come out of they would just be at the entrance of a cinema, or at the movies, or at a nightclub or whatever, and they would go, dude, can I ask you some questions? This is for a you're gonna win whatever, and they're
Hmm.
gonna ask you for the phone number, right? Normally at the cinema or at a nightclub. So
Right.
you'll give them your phone number, and they will wait for you to go in the nightclub, and then they'll just call your house. We have your daughter right here, she's with us, and there's gonna be someone screaming, mom, please don't do it, give him the money, and that's it. So as Pablo said before, you are listening to your child's voice, even if it wasn't close to that, they're listening to their child's voice. So give them the money. Dude, we have your daughter here, she's okay, she was in an accident, send me some money, or uh, or we have her kidnapped, and just I want you to bring me some money. And she wasn't even kidnapped; she's at the nightclub. So that was way back, right? So in the 80s and 90s, when we didn't have mobile phones, at least in
Right.
Mexico.
Right. Right.
And then the normal fake calls here is through accidents, or they're gonna call for example, the security guard at night, and they're going to tell him, "Hey, dude, did you know about this package that's coming in the night for DHL? It's a very important one from IRS or whatever.
Right.
You need to receive that." And then they'll just keep on telling them lies, and they're like, "Okay, but in order for that guy to give you that package, you're gonna have to give him 20,000, like $1,000 or whatever." And then, dude, go break into the director's office. It's the one with the windows. And then they'll say, "How did they know that was the one with windows?" Dude, every director has the windows.
Every director has
office,
windows.
right? So you're just gonna go and tell stuff that everyone has, or at least most of people have. Like, for example, it's gonna be in the bedroom. It's right next to the watches, and right there's gonna you're gonna find the money right there at the closet or whatever. Everyone has that in their rooms. So that's you don't need a scientific to figure that out. But once you're in that hijack mode, the amygdala hijack mode, then you'll just listen and do whatever they say. So stories, there's plenty of stories. We have your son here because he was crossing to the U.S. and we have in customs. If you want him free, please send us some money for the lawyer. So I'm not threatening you.
Right.
I'm letting you know it's to help you. So there's whatever you can imagine, but there's no threat, as Pablo said. That's a very important thing. That's just a fake call, and there's no crime in that, at least here.
Got it.
And I have something to add to what Gonzalo just said, and that also considered to be very important. The way I'm seeing it right now, as our company is starting to operate in the United States and starting to become more and more involved in what's going on, and we now, instead of reading about those stories about the things that happen here, we are actually talking to the people that were actually involved in those stories. And there is a very, or I don't know what the adjective should be, but it's a dreadful resemblance to what was happening in Mexico about 20 years ago.
Got it.
And what I mean is these type of calls existed since, I don't know, since the phones were invented. You can read Chris Hadnack, he talks a lot about that. But if you want to go into history, you can talk about you can read Kevin Mitnick's books, The Art of Intrusion and The Art of Deception. It's fantastic because they used to just do this for the fun of it. But these type of extortions would not have worked back then because there was not the nervousness that you need in the population to actually make these calls believable, right?
Got it.
After a while, after all the riots that have been going on and all the crime that has been going on and defund the police things that, trust me, you don't want to do that, but it's not subject for today. And so after all of that, people are starting to grow very nervous because there's starting to be more crime, or at least there's starting to be more apparent crime. People are starting to find out more about it. There's a lot of more impunity about it. Impunity is also one of the major fuels for the situation to start blowing out of proportion. And once that nervousness about things that were unheard of 20 years ago, now being kidnapped in the U.S. is not as far-fetched as it would have been 20 years ago. So people are starting to get nervous. People are starting to have that top of mind that you can go out and you can get robbed, you can get carjacked, you can. So of course the criminals that do these types of calls, that before they were doing only human hacking or social engineering, now they're using it to be more because fear is like the best amygdala hijacker. Once you go into fear mode, you will start complying with them. And the fact that it's starting to happen outside, extortion is starting to be seen. They're feeding us with all this information now. These criminals have all this at their fingertips, and they're starting to use it against us, or against against the American population.
Right, and you talk about just like the American people are ready for this type of crime because they are hearing about it so much. It just, I guess, got easier for these guys that this is going to be something that happens.
So Andy, so what's right now? What's happening a lot? well, but Pablo said riots. Maybe it's not as common, but riots.
Sure.
Getting into shops and steal things and just get out of the shop and that's it. Active shooters. So if there's a good story behind an active shooter, it will take me 3 hours in order to imagine one behind that. And since that's in the collective fear,
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna be easy for me to get to kidnap your amygdala, and that's what I'm gonna go for. So if I know that in your community there's something that's scaring people, whatever it is, I'm just gonna hold on to that, and I'm gonna get you. Pablo, you were going to say
It's
something.
just like you got the media doing the work for you, because the media is, and TikTok is full of these stories.
Mm-hmm.
People getting into trouble, people getting beaten up, people getting mobbed. And then the media was replicating all these stories. So now people are nervous about the crime rates going up. And I'm not sure the crime rates have gone up. It's just
Mm-hmm.
that we are more aware of the crimes now. They're more apparent, and people
Yes.
are starting to broadcast them more. So now the media has done the work for you. And if you're a professional human hacker, and a bad human hacker, because there are
Right.
the red hats that they call, if you're in there for the money, they just did the job for you. All you have to do is, like Gonzalo said, find what's the collective fear in the community, and then just go and exploit that.
Right.
And the extortions can be, it doesn't have to come for just virtual kidnapping. Virtual kidnapping is really good because you will go into that fear mode, right, like really
Mm-hmm.
fast. But if that's not a situation, they can call you if they have information about you. Because for a more robust, or more thought through extortion, you will need a lot more information. But let's say somebody finds a file that has information about you, your family, where
Mm-hmm.
you go to the doctor, where they go to school, and all that. And then suddenly you get a call and they say, well, if you don't pay me this amount of money, we are actually going to carry out that kidnap.
Mm-hmm.
This is still not a case in the US. And I'm not trying to give anybody any ideas. So if you want to edit this out, it'd be okay. But the thing is, here in the US, you would immediately go and call 911. So they
Right.
don't want you to do that. In Mexico, you don't have that. Right. But they will call you and they will tell you, hey, I know where your kids go to school. I know where you live, where your parents live, where you go to the doctor, because they found this file, but you don't know that. And they will give you all this information to make it so real that most people in Mexico will still pay the extortion and not call the police.
Right.
And the message I want to get across is, don't do that, because when you get into an extortion, first of all, when it's over the phone, when it's in person, it's a whole different story, right?
Sure.
But when it's over the phone, the guy behind that phone line is you dimension, or you're picturing that guy to be all powerful, and you're picturing that guy to have all the power that he's telling you that he has, because he's talking to your amygdala, he's talking to your intuition, and you're reacting very, very with your reptilian brain.
Mm-hmm.
So the moment they give you that information, you start believing that guy, that guy has actually the power to do what he's telling you to do. But the
Right.
problem is, once he's told you what he's going to do if you don't pay him, then the ball's on your court. Now you're going
Mm-hmm.
to have to reply something. And let's say I put a gun to you, to your face, and I say, hey, Andy, give me your watch. What kind of options do I give you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I give you two options.
Yeah. Right.
Really, right? Because you
Right.
can either give me your watch, or you can say, no, I'm not going to give you my watch. And if you don't give me your watch, what kind of options do you give me? Two again, right? I either shoot you for not giving me your watch, or I tell you, you know what, I didn't want to really shoot you, but I wanted to see if you give me your watch. Have a nice day. Whatever the outcome might be, that's the most expensive coin toss of your life. But
Mm-hmm.
here, once you get that message across, even though there is even in Mexico, where there's impunity, where there's no one to probably to call for now, there's a little bit, but there's very little help from the government to get through with these kind of situations. The probability of it actually becoming true, because of what it entails, the infrastructure, everything that they would need to actually make that threat come true, it's outrageous. It's not gonna. It hasn't happened before, right?
Mm.
So, but now I have to tell them I'm not gonna pay. So we know paying is not a good idea, because if you pay, what happens? Then they know you're a client, and they're gonna call back, and they're gonna call back, and they're gonna call back, until you realize that that's it, and then you're at the exact same risk as the first time,
Gotcha.
you paid, right? So if you're not going to pay, if you promise to pay, what's going to happen? They're going to get rid of the other 9,000 people that they had online to call, and they're going to focus on you because you are the one who already promised that to pay. Once you do that, all their attention, all their focus is it's on you. Now, if we're not going to pay, we're not going to promise to pay, why would we talk to them? And you started out the interview in the beginning is what happens if I hang up the phone and they actually have these people kidnapped? Don't worry, they're going to call again. But it'll give you time to find out. And in all the years that I've been doing, helping people with this type of crisis, I can tell you that a professional kidnapping is never resolved in the first few hours. Some of them last a day, some of them last 20 days, some of them last a bit more, but none of them get resolved in the first few hours. So if somebody wants you to do something immediately, if they have the person that's an express kidnapping, not very common, but again, if you hang up the phone, they're gonna call back. They're gonna give you a chance to find out. So if you're not gonna pay, you're not gonna promise to pay, then don't talk to them. The moment you start seeing, hey, hang up the phone and then make a deal with your family. Say everybody has to have a phone on at all times. If you can't take the call, reply with a message. I'm busy. I'll call you back.
Right.
That way, and then if they reply back and they say, hey, I'm okay, I'm busy, I can't take the call right now, call back. That's fine, because you just turn off your phone and let the kidnapper, the extortionists go away. But if you can't find them, then you're gonna be forced to engage in that conversation afterwards.
Right, because then you have to weigh the consequence versus the reality. Maybe they really do have my kid, and man, I'm not going to live with myself if I didn't do what they wanted me to do. Yeah, so exactly. I get that.
But if all your family has that commitment of saying, I can't take the phone right now, I can't come to the phone right now, I'll call you back in a few minutes, I'm okay. Or if somebody's gonna get on a plane, you can call somebody else in the family and say, hey, do you know where he is? So you have a person in the family that everybody calls and tells them, hey, I'm getting on a plane, I'm going to be unavailable, things like that. And so it'll be easy to find out where that person is and then just hang up and don't engage in that conversation because it's very unnerving.
Right. So I will bring this back around to the beginning. It sounds like if I were going to try to add AI voice cloning to this process, it's going to make it infinitely harder for me to do that. So why on earth would I do it in the first place?
Correct.
It's the numbers game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. There's no need for that. Your own AI, internal AI, will do the work for you. Once you just listen to a little kid screaming, then you'll think that's your kid and that's it. That he becomes your kid, and I'm not gonna. There's no way of making you come out from that hypnosis. That's your kid and that's it. So I just I wanted to add something. So you were asking so those are the fake calls. They're gonna fake a call regarding something, asking you for money, or they're just gonna put the pieces right there, and then you're gonna put the pieces together by yourself. You will create the lie that you are most afraid of. So that's it. They'll just drop the pieces right there. You're gonna put them together, and that's it. So that is a fake call. Then there's the threat or the extortion call where there's a threat behind that, and that's not yet kidnapping, but that's just a threat. For example. Yeah, and this was recent. That was just like 3 days ago. A friend of mine called me because he had the following thing. We have a cartel here in Mexico, which is the Jalisco cartel, the new generation cartel.
Yep, I've heard of them.
These guys are becoming very famous, and they are the biggest. Well, I would say maybe the biggest cartel. And these guys are. Everyone's calling you, dude. I am the Commander Z or the Commander 40 or whatever, and I'm from the new generation or from any other cartel. If you don't give me money by this time, then there's going to be trouble for you and your family. That's like a very basic one. Then they'll get some information from you and they'll call you and then they'll tell you, dude. And the one that just happened, I do have the call here. He recorded it. He was speaking to them and he was like, the guy was telling them, dude, I am this commander. I'm calling you. I am outside your home. your home is this, and they gave him his address, your daughter's name, your family's name, and we know you can get that. But by now, I am not afraid.
Mm-hmm.
If they are calling you under the name of any cartel, that's not the way cartels do the thing. So
Okay.
now, for me, I know that's a lie, but for every single one of these people that are not related to security, they'll say, "Dude, it's whatever commander from the cartel calling me." And then this guy said, "I just spoke to the governor, and he told me to call you and ask you for this money." Imagine a governor telling, "Oh
Mm-hmm.
yes, just call Andy and ask him for that money." I mean, the story was so stupid, but he was already engaged, and he
Right.
was so afraid. And he told me, "Dude, he's into a cybersecurity and all that stuff, and he even knows security." But he said, "Dude, I was just so afraid." He gave me my daughter's name, my wife's name, my address. He knew like the little pieces, and he said I started putting them all together, and I was like, okay, yeah, maybe the car that was black that was following me before, and yes, when I came out of my house, there was a white Suburban, and maybe that's them. So he starts inventing his own story, and his own fear will be his worst enemy.
Got it.
So these guys keep on telling him that how much is his life worth, and if it's worth enough, just how much money can you give me in the next 10 minutes. So they have you engaged, they need the money right away. And if he said like, okay, I cannot do $10,000 that you asked for, but I can do 2,000. Oh, come on, you can do more. But if you cannot do more in the following minutes, they'll take your $2,000. And if they take them, then they might call you 3 days later and tell you, dude, we think that was not enough and we'll need more money. And then you become, as Pablo said, you become his client. And that's
Got it.
just, there's a threat behind that. And they have enough information to make it believable.
Got it. Got it.
That's a big difference between just the fake call and the extortion.
Right.
Anything you want to add to that, Pablo?
No, actually, I think we've gone around the same subject a little bit. Maybe you have another question where you want to lead the conversation,
Sure.
Andy?
So yeah, as we wrap up here, this was something that I wanted to ask y'all. I love Mexico. I have been there before. The people there are amazing, and I know a lot of times that in the United States we get news that is not always encouraging for people to come and visit. So I'll ask you: is kidnapping still a thing in Mexico?
Well, that's actually a very good question because the first thing that they'll tell you when you go to Mexico is you have to be careful with kidnappings, right? And it used to be a time where kidnappings were a big thing in Mexico, but the kidnappings would be very, very directed to some people, some, very clear socio-economical bracket where they would go, an average, they would take people that could pay about $50,000 or more within 21 days.
Mm-hmm.
That was the average. Of course, there were the $1 million kidnappings that lasted for months, but
Right.
those are like really high profile kidnappings. But the problem was at some point, and if you hear the story, which is probably for another time, but the story started with bank robberies, and then somebody called Andres Caletri decided that bank robberies was not such a good business because first you needed a lot of people to steal not a lot of money, and the risk of being exposed to the bank was great. So they understood that kidnapping the manager of the bank would get them more money without the exposure. And then they realized that kidnapping the family of the bank manager would get them more money without that much exposure, and then kidnapping anyone that would have access to these $15,000 or more would give them that exposure. So all they needed to know is that you or your family could pay $50,000 within 1 month. But then that would, they of course have the express kidnapping, but that's not considered a kidnapping because there's no ransom. That still happens. And what happens is based on the information that you have, they take you around to ATMs, get them as much money as they can from you. But that's more like a robbery that's gone along. The
Mm-hmm.
problem is, again, somebody realized that kidnapping was a lot of risk and there was a lot of exposure. And so they stopped doing that. There's still a few cases around there, none that we have been able to confirm for a very long time, because people started taking care of themselves. People started not making sure they were never the lowest hanging fruit. So that increased the risk to the kidnappers. And, very rich people in Mexico started investing in executive protection and armored vehicles and things like that. So that wasn't very good business anymore. So what they did is they went down market. And that made it easier to deal with for the companies and corporations, but the risk kind of like shifted towards now a kidnapping lasts on average 9 days. They take anyone that can pay between $1,000 and $50,000. And they just keep them all together. And the problem is the organized crime got involved in kidnapping. So to answer your question, the simple answer is yes, there's still kidnapping. But the complicated answer is no, there's no more kidnapping or targeted kidnapping for ransom. Now it's just they'll pick you up. And if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, they'll pick you up, they'll take you away. And with whatever information they can get from you, they'll make that call and they will ask for whatever they can get within 9 days. But again, it's not a few hours, 9 days. They don't want what they can get in, because whatever you tell them that you can give them in a few hours, that's where the negotiation starts, right?
Gotcha.
That's the difference between a virtual kidnapping, because in a virtual kidnapping, if you say, hey, I have a 10 grand right now, they'll say, fantastic, hand it over. On a real kidnapping, if you say, hey, I have 10 grand right now, they'll say, fantastic, I'll call you tomorrow if you see you can get another 10. Right? So that's something to keep in mind, and hope that answers the question.
Yes.
Gonzalo, I don't know if you want to add something to that.
Well, I would just add, if your biggest fear coming to Mexico is kidnapping, just forget about it. Don't even the possibility. I mean, there's always a possibility, even in the U.S.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's really ridiculous. That wouldn't be my fear at all.
Got it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. You have certainly expanded my horizons today. I absolutely enjoyed this conversation. Tell folks where they can find out more about you. Pablo, we'll start with you. Where can we find out more about you?
The best way to reach out would be LinkedIn, I would think. You can find me by Pablo Ortiz-Monasterio, or my company is AS3 Driving everywhere in the world. So whatever you want, happy to help.
Very good. And what about you, Gonzalo?
So LinkedIn as well, Gonzalo Senosiain, Senosiain, or through in social media, Combat MF, that's MF, and grip.mx as well.
Very cool. Guys, thank you so much for what you're doing. I know that what you're doing is hard, and it's not easy, but I appreciate that there are men like you out there trying to help people who are in need. God bless you.
Thank you, Andy. God bless you too. And thanks for having us. It's great to see you again, even it's through a screen.
Oh yeah, absolutely.